Hello, this is Janet Smith. I am putting together a series of instructions on how to follow the prayers of the Latin Mass for those who don't know Latin. I have just recently rediscovered the Latin Mass in the last 2 years. I grew up with it, but it was not that beautiful. Our priest could say a Sunday Mass in only 19 minutes. I do remember being very captivated by the prayers of the Mass and thinking they were exceptionally beautiful. I stumbled upon the Mass about 2 years ago, and I was stunned at how available it was. I was stunned by how beautifully it was prayed. I was stunned by how many young people were at the Mass. I realized that only about 5% of Catholics today have ever been to a traditional Latin Mass. So for them, this is quite a shock to attempt the Mass. Many have found it to be very beautiful, but have uh, been put off, if you will, or discouraged by the fact that they don't know Latin. Well, I don't think that's necessary for attending the Mass at all. One of my priest friends says, just be there and just soak it in. Uh, there are many ways of praying the Mass. One is simply to follow with the English, and not even to follow, just to pray the English prayers while the Mass is being said. But I know many people would like to know the Latin, and I don't blame them. The Latin is beautiful. I had a lot of Latin. I have a PhD in classical languages, but I finished my degree some 40 years ago and haven't used it much since. I've been dusting it off and really enjoying it. I'll likely make mistakes, but I'm confident people will correct me and I will improve future editions of this. This is a picture of St. Joe Oratory in downtown Detroit. Unbelievably beautiful church, unbelievably beautiful masses done by the Institute of Christ the King. I'm delirious that the Mass has come to my own parish, to St. Thomas the Apostle in Ann Arbor. The traditional Latin Mass is now said every Sunday and often on feast days. I never thought it would come to my own parish. God is good. All right. So we're going to learn to pray the traditional Latin Mass by learning Latin in an untraditional way. There's going to be no memorization required, but there's going to be much repetition, and I'm going to teach you the art of good guessing. This is a wonderful book to get you introduced to the traditional Latin Mass. Peter Kwasniewski lives and breathes the Latin Mass morning, noon, and night. Writes about 3 articles a day. It seems that he posts on different websites and writes a book a couple times a year. So he knows this inside and out. He's traveled quite a journey himself, and I recommend this book. Latin is a sacred language. Every religion has a sacred language, meaning it uses a language that is not the language of the street. It's not the common language. It's a language that was at one time a popular language, but it's become fancified. It's become improved. The best of it is preserved in the liturgy. It's become a bit archaic. Maybe in this case, supposedly a dead language, though you'll see it's not dead. Latin is everywhere in English. At any rate, sacred means set apart, and a language is set apart for the liturgy so that we can really understand we are in a sacred space. And a sacred space is one that is dedicated to God. And so the Mass is a sacred space dedicated to God in which we use sacred vestments, we use sacred vessels, and we use a sacred language. So, as I said, very few attendees are able to follow the whole Mass in Latin, even those who know Latin well. It's not designed to be something that is spoken loudly, slowly, clearly, so that those who know Latin can sit in the pew and understand it. As you've been there, you know that's not the case. Again, I can understand, I know every word of the Latin Mass in the sense that I will see it on the page. I know what case it is. I know what it means. I know what function it performs in the sentence. And I can't follow the whole of the Mass, and really nobody can. In fact, the priest says many of the prayers so silently. So you can't follow by hearing in the Mass. You'll have to use the booklet no matter what to know where you are. There are also times in the Mass where the choir is singing part of the Mass while the priest goes on to pray the next part. If you follow along with the Sanctus, singing of the Sanctus or the Agnus Dei, you won't keep up with the priest. He moves on while that prayer is being sung. When you start to attend a traditional Latin Mass, my recommendation is you should read the Missal prior to the Mass and enjoy how reverent the prayers are. I hope you set aside some time every day for prayer. And as you're approaching saying or going to the traditional Latin Mass, I recommend that you read the Missal, pray the prayers of the Missal before the week before the Mass. It's going to take you weeks, if not months, to really feel comfortable at the Mass. And during that time, I would say at least once a week, read through at least parts of the Mass so that when you get there, it's not unfamiliar to you. At Mass, follow as you will, but sometimes just stop and sit with whatever prayer wants to settle into your being. Observe what the priest is doing, and especially note his reverence and the reverence of the altar boys. Every gesture, every movement is deliberate, is very dignified, elegant, designed to put us into a reverent, receptive, prayerful state. Again, the important thing is simply to get into a prayerful state of receptivity. Get there early. The beginning of the missalettes have beautiful prayers before Mass. And I promise you, by the time you pray those and pray them reverently, you will be in a different space in respect to your head. You won't be thinking about what you need to do for the rest of the day. You will be thinking about yourself and your relationship to God. And be patient. Eventually, you will experience what a transcendent way of worshiping the traditional Mass is. It's a transcendent way of worshiping. The modern Novus Ordo is more of an emotional way of participating. This is a transcendent way. So again, this program is learning Latin for the Mass, the cognate and derivative way. I will explain even those words. A wonderful book to have handy is this book called Treasure and Tradition, the Ultimate Guide to the Latin Mass, published by St. Augustine Academy Press. It answers almost all your questions. This Mass is one we're not familiar with, and this will bring you up to speed. And one thing that's particularly useful about this version is that it has an interlinear version of the prayers. That means it presents them in Latin, and then underneath the Latin, it gives the English. It also has the English in a smooth way on the right-hand side of the prayer. So you'll be able to pray the Latin Mass looking at the Latin, but having the English right underneath the words, which doesn't make for a smooth translation because the word order is different. And then if you want to pray just the English prayers or the prayers in English, it is available on the same page. The word cognate means that the English, it refers to an English word that comes from Latin and means the same thing as in Latin, though those words may be different in form. They may not be spelled precisely the same way. The word cognate is in fact a cognate. It comes from two Latin words. One means with, that's what co means, comes from cum, and natal, natare, which means to be born. So it's something that's born together. They're twins, right? They're identical twins. They, in a sense, mean the same thing. We have words like Gloria, the Latin. In fact, I think I have these switched a little bit here. Anyway, but Gloria, the English word glory comes from the Latin word gloria. Here's what I have switched. The word laud, to laud someone, means to praise them. Laudare in Latin means to pray. In English, we adore something. And in Latin, it's adorare, which means to adore. So you know the Latin, you know the English. You know the English, you know the Latin. Right? That's what cognates are. A derivative or derivatives are English words connected to Latin words, but not exact in meaning. It's fun. The word derivative itself is, again, a derivative. It means down river. Okay, de means down as a preposition, and riva means river. So are the word mundane. In English, it means something that is boring. The word mundus in Latin means world. Now, it doesn't mean boring. It just means this world as opposed to heaven. But in English, it has come to mean something that is boring, and something that is boring is of this world. So it doesn't mean exactly the same word, but it comes from it. The word dexterous comes from the Latin word dexter, referring to the right hand. A dexterous person is one who can use his hands well. But that action comes from the thought, the concept that the right hand can do more than the left hand for most people. So a dexterous person isn't a right-handed person. It's one who can use both hands, you might say, as though they were both right hands. The word sinister means left. And our word sinister kind of means evil or sneaky. That's because it was thought that the left hand is the sneaky hand. When you're fighting with someone, you have your sword in your right hand, but there are sneaky things you can do with your left hand. The word capital, the capital city of a state, is the head city. Caput literally means the head of the body, but it's used in a derivative way or metaphorical way here to mean the head of a state. All right, so here are some Latin words, and I'm going to list them. First, in bold, is the form of the word you would find in the dictionary, and then the form of the word as it appears in a prayer that we're doing. And then I give you on the right-hand side some English word that's related as a cognate or derivative, or some even English word that might not be related, but is a good mnemonic aid, sounds enough like it, looks enough like it that you could guess what it means. The word confiter, the prayer itself, the confiteor, comes from confitere, means confess. Generally, though, even though it means confess, like I confess my sins, even more so, it means I make a statement of faith. This is what I believe. Martyrs are called also confessors, meaning not that they heard confessions or that they confessed their sins, but they professed their faith. Deus means God, or our word deity. Omnipotens is the word omnipotent, two words. Omni means all. Potent means able to or powerful, having every powerful. The omnipotent God is the all-powerful, almighty, can do everything God. Beatus, our word beatify comes from that. We talk about the blessed the beatification of, say, Solanus Casey. Then he becomes the blessed Solanus Casey. So beatus means blessed. Semper means always. The Marines have as their motto semper fi, always faithful. Fi comes from fidelity. So we have the semper virgine, the always Virgin Mary. Sanctus, our word sanctify comes from that, to make something holy. And a saint is a holy person. Sanctus, and then we have the word sanctis, means, say, to the saints. We've already looked at omnis. It's the word meaning all. In Congress, we have the word omnibus, which means a bill that covers everything, an omnibus bill, rather than something that looks on only a singular thing. So we're going to have a quick introduction here to what grammar is. The grammar in Latin is quite complicated. It's what's called an inflected language, which means that every word has an ending on it. An ending means that's spelled in something that's spelled in a certain way that's attached to the end of a verb or a noun or any word that tells you how it fits into the meaning of a sentence. Right? When we learn our native language, we don't learn it by memorizing grammar. There is some inflection in Latin, in English. For instance, the verb to go. Early on, we learned to say, I go, you go, he, she, it goes. We go, you go, they go. Right? The word go is usually the word for go, but when it's a third person singular, he, she, it goes. Now, a small child might some point say, I go, he go, and then you say, I go, he goes. And after a period of time, the child accepts that and says, I go, he goes, not knowing that he's conjugating a verb, right? And he isn't told why, and you don't know why. It's goes instead of go. But there it is, and we learn it, and there's a lot of verbs that do that. Another one is I have, you have, and then he, she, it has. Right? We have, you have, they have. Right? Where does has come in? Right? So it's something, and we just learn by hearing it. We learn by repeating it. We learn possibly by being corrected. So that's how a verb is what we call conjugated. Well, nouns are what we call declined. We have some of those in English. I gave my ball to him, and he gave it back to me. So I, my, and me, spelled very differently, all are the same word. They refer to I, the agent, me, right? But the way it's spelled, it doesn't say I gave eyeball to him and he gave it back to I. I gave my ball to not he, but to him. And he, not him, gave it back to me. So him tells us that it's the indirect object, and he tells us that it's the subject of the sentence. It refers to the same person, but because it appears differently, has a different form, we know what the role it plays in the sentence. Uninflected languages, again, you know the role of words only because of how or where they appear in the sentence. We have the sentence, John hit the ball. We know that John is the agent of the action, the subject of the sentence, and ball is the object of the verb hit, the direct object. It's John hitting the ball. The ball is the recipient of John's action. We know that because who's doing the hitting and what got hit because of the arrangement of the words. The ball hit John. If we rearrange the words, we get a different meaning. The ball is doing the hitting and John is getting hit. So same word, but arranged differently, the sentence means the opposite of what it meant before. The same with John ate the alligator and the alligator ate John. It's the arrangement of the words that tells us who's performing the action and what is acted upon. And as I mentioned, though, in an inflected language, the form or ending of the word indicates the role of the word in the sentence. Uninflected is I hit the ball, or the ball I hit, right? This is an uninflected language. The ball hit me is an inflected language. The ball hit me, right? If you rearrange it, you still know who did that the ball is doing the hitting and I'm the one being hit. The ball hit me, the ball hit. Right? So I can rearrange the words, but you still know what it what it means, even if the words are rearranged. For uninflected languages, if the words are rearranged, we don't know what they mean unless we put some punctuation in here. For instance, the ball I hit, but not because of form. They ate the alligator, comma, they ate. We have to do something like put a comma there, or we're not so sure who's doing the eating. The alligator ate them. We know who's doing the eating and who got ate. Them, the alligator ate. Now, we don't really need the comma. We know who does the eating and who got eaten. Right. Now, in Latin, nouns are declined, right? That means they have different cases. Decline means to go down from. You know, if you decline something, you turn it down. All right. So there are 6 different cases in Latin. I'm not using a noun here. I'm using a pronoun because we have this in English in respect to pronouns. We have words that are declined. We've looked a little bit at it, but let's do it again. You don't need to memorize these cases. I will refer to them when I'm teaching, but you don't need to memorize this. You'll learn it through repetition. So the 6 cases are the nominative case, or the subject of the sentence, the genitive or the possessive case, which shows ownership. Dative is the indirect object. The word do or dare, to give, appears in date. Accusative is referring to the direct object or the object of some prepositions. And the ablative is another prepositional case. And there's the vocative case that means I'm addressing you directly. So in English, we have these words, I, mine, to me, me, and then you, which refers to you, not I. At any rate, I is, look at how they spell differently. I, mine, me. And then we have the same word, me. But they are spelled differently, but we know that all of them are the same word, though they perform different functions in a sentence. The same with the plural. We, our, to, us, you, right? We, our, and us all look very different, right? And so by the spelling, we often know how these words function in a sentence. Verbs are said to be conjugated. We already saw go, goes, and have, has. This is the verb to be. It's this is a conjugation. This is just simply the present case. We conjugate our verbs, though, in English, as I said. I am, you are, he, she, it is. Those are all the same verb. Am, are, is. They're all forms of to be. I am, you are, he, she, it is. In Latin, we have sum es est, sumus estis sunt. You notice there's only one word there. We have I am, but we have sum, we have we are, and we have sumus, because in Latin, the subject of the sentence, the person, is folded into the form of the verb. You don't have to memorize this. You'll see these a lot and you'll get to know them. So this is how the program works. There will be 2 videos for each prayer or segment of the Mass. The first video includes vocabulary and grammar, but don't be frightened by the grammar. There is no memorization, nor is there for the vocabulary. I'm assuming you already know these things or can make the association. First, we'll look at the vocabulary in the prayer, along with the English cognates or derivatives or some mnemonic aid that helps you see what the Latin word means because you know a word in English that is related to it. We'll listen to the prayer chanted or prayed online. And that's we'll go through it once, but I recommend you do it many times. A marvelous way to learn something, of course, is to sing it. And we have beautiful renditions of these available online. And then every segment will include a brief explanation of some of the peculiarities of Latin grammar, as I just did in this segment. It doesn't require memorization, but it's going to help you know what I'm talking about when I'm explaining the prayers. Video 2 is an interlinear presentation of the prayer. I put the prayer on an Excel sheet, and we're going to review that prayer word by word in an interlinear form. In fact, I would recommend that you print it out so you can make notations and even take it to Mass with you until you feel very comfortable with it. Line 1 will be the Latin. Line 2 is the English translation. And line 3 is the English cognate or derivative. I use a lot of colors. Again, you don't need to memorize these, but this is just to give you just heads up. The red bold in the Latin line means the word is the verb. It's often best to find the verb first. It helps you know a lot that's going on in a sentence, even if it's 3 lines later that you find the verb. The blue bold is the noun or subject of the sentence. You have those, you got the core of the sentence. Something does something. The green bold is the object of the verb. The purple bold in the Latin line means some relative pronoun. Then I use all sorts of highlighting, blue highlighting to indicate 2 or 3 or more verb or nouns that go together. These are masculine. We'll talk about the masculine gender in words as we go along. Pink highlighting is a cluster of words that are feminine. Green highlighting is a neuter cluster of words. Yellow highlighting means there's different genders, but these words are to be said and thought of as going together. And purple highlighting means it's a connecting word between different clauses. Again, don't worry about getting this straight. I'm not going to give you a quiz on what does the blue mean. It will become clear as we go through the prayer. Finally, this is my recommendation. You should pray the prayer every day for as long as it takes you to become so familiar with it, you don't need to look at the English. This will take you minutes every day. If you pray every day, I hope you do, take the form that you have printed out of my Excel sheet of the interlinear version of the prayer, go through it several times. Before long, you won't have to look at the derivatives. Before long, you won't have to look at the English. Before long, you'll be looking only at the Latin. It's wise as often as you can to listen to it being prayed or sung online. And before long, these prayers will be yours. Right? Let's get started.